What happens when a promoter texts you, I'm working on this event and we'd love to have a guitar player from the district play this beautiful and legendary status song. I thought of you, what do you think? And at the same time that I'm really excited to do it and even think to myself, I have the perfect guitar for it, that I had made for these specific scenarios and you wouldn't even imagine, but I love the song and I've been wanting to cover it for years. There's only one problem, I look at my schedule and calendar and between work and all sorts of other projects, I only have a maximum of 10 days to work on it. Crazy, right? Perhaps. This is what this documentary is all about. This is an obvious example of what I like to call the autopilot syndrome. Nothing very crazy here. This might be the only time I have to practice.
I left my backpack at home.
My computer just can't handle it. You really can't tell I'm sick. So update, it sucks ass. It sounds really, really bad. Gonna have to figure out another solution. Now the song itself that I'm going to be playing is especially special to me because if you've seen some of my older videos, you know that I have a thing for film scoring. Not only have I talked throughout my social medias about different movie scores and themes, but I've also made my own fun challenge videos of trying to make a theme for a specific character, movie, TV show, video game, whatever it might be, but in a challenge format of a spin the wheel type where I get some sort of restriction like the director of a movie would give to a composer in the way of vibe, mood, genre, whatever it might be. And this song that we're going to be covering, Verdes, or Verdes Anos if you want to be like that, which basically translates to Green Years, is actually the main theme for a movie called The Green Years, Os Verdes Anos. Which I hadn't yet watched before the proposition of this gig appeared. Not for any specific reason, just I didn't really had the proper timing to do it, but I had heard the song multiple times before. I even thought of doing my own arrangement just because the song is that cool. So when you put together all these ingredients, a Portuguese song by a Portuguese artist for the Portuguese guitar, which I don't exactly play, but even then, guitar-oriented song that I already wanted to cover in the first place, and it's a theme for a movie, I couldn't feel more connected with this song. Well, I guess I could if, hypothetically, the way that the song is composed, like the note choices, the chord progressions, were any bit like the sorts of sensibilities that I have, but surely that would be way too much of a coincidence, right? The point of this series is not to talk or analyze the movie, but I think there are some important pieces of information here that are pretty relevant. The movie Os Verdes Anos, aka The Green Years, was a movie that was made around 1962 by a director called Paulo Rocha, released in 1963, which was still during a period of dictatorship during Portugal. In fact, it only ended around 1974. So while there was a lot of prosecution and censorship, not only when it came to the arts like music, movies, books, paintings, drawings, theater, whatever, people also weren't allowed to just talk about certain things, not only out in the streets, but also in the privacy of their own homes, because if someone knew about it, well, you'd probably be arrested, at least. And this movie, while a bit weird even for today's standards, it is one of those movies that is still timeless. Like if you'd watch it today, the themes of migrating from a simpler life to a more busy city life, where there's all sorts of dark things waiting for you around the corner, but it is also the land of opportunity, hasn't stopped being relevant at all, and even the way that the main couple within the movie interacts really felt personal for someone in the dating scene in 2025 when the movie was released in 1963. Bits and pieces of political commentary hidden within the fabric of the story so that the government wouldn't go after the filmmakers. And while back in 1963 most people felt like it was a departure from regular cinema, at least Portuguese cinema, which doesn't really have a super rich history in the sense that we were a country with not a lot of resources and people always struggled to find work in the cultural sector, it was for sure impactful and started this movement of a new age of cinema within Portugal. Obviously inspired from other film movements in other countries, but that's not really important. What is important though, for the sake of this documentary, is the music of the movie, because not only did it play a big part in the reception of the movie and in establishing that new movement for cinema, it was also that movie that spawned the song that we're going to be covering. Like I mentioned, the movie is called The Green Years and the song is called Green Years. And the term itself, Green Years, while I think is mostly understandable for other cultures as well, for a little bit of context, here in Portugal the word for the color green is one of the words that we also use for a fruit that isn't ripe yet. So we say that fruit or vegetable is still green. So I think you can understand how the green years take you back for your early years of adulthood, where you're almost at that stage of full development, but you still have so much to experience, and it is those years that are very formative, not only for how your personality and life end up developing as, but they are usually those years where you get to truly experience something new, which is shown not only in the movie throughout the plot of the movie and some of the scenery and imagery, but also through the music. The composer of the movie, Mr. Carlos Paredes, or again, I feel always awful by saying this, but Carlos Paredes, or Carlos Paredes, I guess, a already renowned Portuguese guitar player, even by back then standards, but we'll talk more about him later, did an amazing job job of portraying those feelings of your years of coming into terms of who you are and who you want to be in one way throughout the whole score and throughout the whole song Green Years. But while the song kind of just has two riffs, you don't even need to break down the two riffs in order to associate those feelings, especially after having watched the movie. Some of these interesting chord changes and chord progressions with hints of darkness and hope in there not only really match the feeling of those years, but it completely matches the vibe. Like, I'll just give you an example. I knew the song before having watched the movie, but while watching the movie, especially in the first sections, it just felt like your traditional old school Portuguese movie, which I know is really not saying a lot and at the same time being very disrespectful, but trust me, this is going somewhere. The movie just had a traditional Portuguese movie vibe, and while the fado music makes sense within the context of a Portuguese movie, I would sometimes hear some chords and interesting changes throughout the movie, mostly because sometimes things were a little bit too dark and feel like it didn't really match the vibe of the movie, or like the vibe of the characters, or the vibe of the scene. But then as the movie progresses, especially when you get to the end of the movie, all those chords completely settle into place. They all make all the amount of sense. While I mentioned before that the director Paulo Rocha was inspired to talk about themes like migrating to bigger cities and the consequences that that has on your personality and in your development, and even how it might change your character as a person. Here's the pseudo spoiler for the movie. The director was also inspired to make this movie from a real life story of a real life crime of this shoemaker who killed his girlfriend. Now that's a piece of information that I did not know before I watched the movie, and I feel really glad that I didn't know that piece of information, because I feel like it wouldn't have ruined the movie for me, but it would have given me a different perspective as time goes on. And while I'm a big movie fan, and especially a big movie score and movie soundtrack fan, I don't feel like I can express with just words how on the nose everything is, not only probably in the way how the filmmaker communicated with the music maker or the composer, and be like, this is the vibe, please try to capture it somehow in your own vibe, because I hired you is because I like the music you make. And they really hit the mark. Like, trust me, they really hit the mark. Portugal isn't the best country at taking care of its culture, so it's not exactly that easy to find a movie, but I could hypothetically tell you that if you hypothetically went to the world's most used search engine, and if you looked for Os Verdes and maybe you went to the video section and scrolled down a little bit, maybe you could find it online in a pseudo-illegal or not illegal way, but that's just a hypothetical on my end. Like I said, the movie is in Portuguese, and it's not easy to find like subtitles for it, but I'm sure that like AI might be able to do it or something like that. But trust me, I feel like you might really enjoy the experience. And even if you don't enjoy the movie, I feel like you might relate to how I feel about how well the imagery in the movie connects with the music itself, and it just lock in not only in themes, but vibes and the way it makes you feel. Hello there. So I don't know if you know, but this is part of a documentary I made. Now, you can hypothetically just wait a couple of days until a new shorter video where it's all segmented down will come out, or you can just go into my YouTube channel and watch the full documentary, which was honestly how I envisioned this content to go, but not everyone's going to go watch a long documentary, so yeah, either go watch the documentary or just wait a couple of days. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and leave a like, comment, subscribe, follow, and stay tuned for more if you want to indeed stay tuned for more.